Good morning, Collective, and welcome back to Altruistic Channels. Today's video is going to be dedicated towards entertainment with value. And one of the things that this program that I'm trying to get done is going to be focusing on is how to humanize the experience of what we cover or what we discuss. Every time that we think of a controversial topic or a divisive aspect to life, we realize that there's always a human story attached to it, right? And so yesterday I decided to go and spend the day with a very old friend of mine who used to actually be one of my exes. And I hadn't seen them since I came here. Now, one of the interesting things about it is that this person was the person that I was going to stay with when I first moved to Los Angeles. Back when I got the spiritual assignment, I thought I'd go and, go into the fire, as it were, and go into the whole COVID thing that Spirit had asked me to go into, to kind of face my own demons and take accountability for my own life and all of that stuff, and to really explore what's going on in the world at large. And I was going to stay with this person, and at the last minute it got canceled, and I ended up going on that journey that we've all shared, that I went on. And so I decided that I would go and visit this person and just spend the day with them. Many would say that I could have every reason to not see this person again and be all angry and bitter that they canceled at the last minute and that I was left in a situation that left me kind of dire. But one of the things about life is that when you truly value someone's for who they are, and especially if they have a connection to you at that level, that you don't ever really look at things that way. So in place of that, I wanted to just go catch up with the person and see how everything was. And some of the backstory here, without getting too personal, because it is a dear friend of mine, is that they had a stroke a couple years back, and they were on the road to recovery. And so I went over, and I hadn't really spent the day with them since that had happened, and I was with them, and I noticed how much higher the vibration had become and how much more in alignment they seemed to be with something greater than themselves, and their personality was just booming as always. And I just fell in love with the experience because it was something that I didn't expect. I didn't know how I would feel about it, and I didn't realize how much I had changed because of the fact that I could have been slightly snarky with the person for what had happened and the whole journey that I'd been on. But the truth of it was that I couldn't help but be thankful for the experience. And so I was very much more aware of their soul and the idea of like a soul contract or whatnot, where someone agrees in a great academy to teach you a lesson that is built in love. And one of it is accountability, because in the process, obviously, I had to learn that I made my own choices, and where I had led myself to in that moment was not as much their responsibility for not being able to house me on this transition. It was about my choices. And so when I was there, I was really, really aware of the fact that I had gotten a really big blessing out of something that was not a great experience. And so as I sat there and I spent the day with them, one thing I noticed was that there was a sense of us having to let go of people. We sat and discussed how we were the last two, mainly of the original group, that was still around. He's in his 60s and I'm in my 40s. And we were talking about how that can be a little hard to get through in a time like this, when the world seems to be getting smaller and smaller, and how we are to let go of people who aren't going with us. And as I was speaking to him, I thought I'd share, without going too deep into it, my personal opinion on the topic. And I thought for turquoise leadership, or any type of executive or new leadership that forms from whatever happens next, I realized that what it was is that we were gifted with soul warrior level in experiences. We had come through the fire so many times that for us there was no option to give up, and we spent a lot of time speaking about what that meant and the zest for life that we have, and the fact that we have people that are making bad choices for themselves, or choices, we try not to judge, but they're making choices that aren't for their highest of high, and what that means for us as their friends and lovers or family. And I made the comment to him, I said, well, everyone has free will, and everyone can choose to give up. And I used his experience with the stroke as a focal point. I said, look, bud, I'm not going to give you his name. Look, bud, you could have chosen to lay there after the stroke happened. You could have decided to give up, but you didn't. And look at you now. You're walking and you're doing everything you do. And I could see that it was an emotional topic for this person. But it wasn't from a place of woe. It was from a place of having to let go of people who were giving up and people who weren't choosing to move forward, because maybe they couldn't. Maybe their body was too exhausted or whatnot. We had a lot of friends that died from drug addiction and stuff like that. And I was trying to relate with him on a human level. And the more I interacted with him, the more I realized that loneliness is an incredibly dark part of all of this journey. As we encounter these experiences that we rise above and that we get through, a lot of people don't. And so how was I going to make him feel a little bit better about the future when he was watching the people around him not come through, and what that meant for him if he chose to walk the path through the fire? And I realized it wasn't just our conversation. It was a really, really big part of everyone's life right now. You know, everybody says that they want to get through whatever is going on, but not everybody is willing to do the work, as it were. And he was a perfect example of it. With him having that seizure, he could have become victimized. He wanted to give up, but he didn't. He said his soul just would not get, it was like, no, get up. And I was like, well, yeah, we've known each other long enough. Neither one of us have that luxury. And I pointed out in the conversation, I said, well, you know what's interesting? It is that troublesome life that we've had, and all the wrong choices that we've made, and all of the sacrifices that we've had in our life, that made you understand your soul clearly when it said, you're not giving up until I tell you to give up. Get up. And against all odds, he did exactly that. And now he goes for walks and he does all this stuff. But what we neglect to tell people, or what we neglect to connect on at this point, which is a really big turquoise leadership topic, is how do you personalize an experience like that in a way that helps that warrior, that soul warrior leader, get through the letting go of people who can't do that, or who won't do that for themselves. And so we spent the afternoon talking about how lonely that was making people. You know, in this P-word era where people are afraid to interact with each other, we have a lot of parents that are now on their way home, and they're not seeing their family because their family is afraid that they will get a virus that can hurt, that can somehow make them sick at least. And though there's a lot of argument around that, the one thing that we can't scurry away from is that we're leaving our elderly, or people who are in situations where they are heading home, and we're leaving them by themselves, completely isolated and alone. And I had written a piece back, I think it was about 5 months ago on LinkedIn, where I had mentioned that is a karmic debt that a lot of us are going to have to pay, because in fear we've let our family die alone. And what that must feel like to not just the person who passes and goes home, but also the person left behind. And it reminded me of survivor's guilt. And so I was watching that kind of play out in the interaction, but I wasn't going to say that to my friend because I loved him so much. But there came a couple points where I was just talking very candidly about what it's like as an ascendant, as someone who saw this coming and who understood that spiritually speaking, not everybody gets to go through, but that we were, and that he and I would be seeing each other in the future. And what I didn't realize is that I was closing a chapter, because this was my first partner in my entire life. This was one of my big loves, and I hadn't seen him in 20-something years, and yet we still look the same, both of us, and we both still are together as friends. And what I realized is that though that chapter can continue into something new, the old us is eternally gone. That we are no longer allowed to live in the past. We must look to the future. And the whole context of letting people go and how to get through that as a survivor, and the survivor's guilt that can happen to those whose, let's say, mom or dad passes from this P word, and they realize one day down the road that they let them pass and alone, and that they could have been there. And as the awareness and the truth of the V and stuff comes to light with seizures and stuff like that going on, our reality of what will come is also a karmic thing, where we will at some point realize that though we understood that we were afraid and that we were misled, we still chose to let mom and dad or grandma or whoever it was go off to the hereafter alone. And because I was watching the tears come out of his eyes over the topic of all the friends that he's lost in general, and that he would be here long after they were, and what that would be like, I said very candidly, I go, do you want that? You have a choice here. And I was being supportive, not like talking down. I was just saying to them, I was like, do you want to go on? I do. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm walking through the fire, and why I'm not afraid, and why I'm ensuring that I spend time with people that I care about. I don't care if you had the P word, I would still come and visit you. But that's me. I can't choose that for other people. But I said, do you want to go to the next level? Because everybody has to do this. And he said, yes. And I said, okay. So then understand that the greatest love we can give another human being is to let them make their own free will choices. And though it's hard for us to understand when they choose to do the lay down and die or give up or whatnot, though we don't understand that personally, they must be allowed to do their journey on their own accord. It is a learning academy, and that lesson is something that everyone must learn. It's like when you see an animal that you don't know if it's rabid or not, like a dog, that decides to break free of its cage. Normally I would go and run after it, but the other day my intuition said, leave the dog alone. The dog wanted its freedom. And, it is its own animal. And of course it was down the block, so I couldn't have gotten anyway, but the point is that I was like going to run after it, and my soul was like, just leave the dog be. I'm not equating human and dog, by the way, I'm just using an example. Let the animal make its own choices. If something happens to it, then the soul learns that lesson. And so it was interesting that it tied into the experience with my friend. And so he stopped crying for a little bit, and I realized that what we were speaking to was the loneliness factor. How do we as a turquoise leadership and entertainment with values to come, how do we connect to people on a soul level that invites them to understand the truth of what they're after? Everybody says that they want to live and they want to do everything that they've always done, and they want some normalcy, but they're afraid to go out and interact with each other, and they're leaving a lot of people alone and terrified of their own, just to move or to do anything. And so if we do go on, the world it gets smaller and smaller, and the question then that we should be asking is, are they prepared for the loneliness that will come for some of us in different demographics and different sectors? If we're okay with being a lone wolf for a while, are we okay with the loneliness if a lot of people aren't given the golden ticket to move forward? And that's a really deep conversation that we should be having. And one of the big reasons I really want to get the show on the air and really, really engage the audience in these topics. It's not that I'm being negative. It's that people aren't making it. They're not. And we're making bad choices on top of it. And so that's adding extra wood to the fire. And so though I'm not going to sit here and castigate people, everybody has the right to their own free choices. The question now becomes for us as turquoise leaders and as entertainment with values, how do we remind them that when they go through this, they're going to have to make a conscious decision to be alone if they need to be, and to start again? Are we able to start this journey over again? It is a incredibly important topic that nobody's talking about, and where our attention should be right now. With reporters and so forth talking about how people are exiting, we're forgetting that those left behind have to go on. And are they willing to understand what that means? Do they understand the economic ramifications of free money? Do they understand what inflation will do? Do they understand that we're in another depression? Do they understand that we're going to have to fight for our freedom? Do they understand that they're going to have to fight for their lives in a sense of wanting to be here and wanting to experience what it is to go back to basics? That is the truth of us. Are we ready to have the serious and honest conversation on a soul level with other people and let them know, okay, I get it, you're terrified of going home. I get that. But if you stay, you won't get an opportunity to just lay down anymore. You're going to have to keep going. It's not, everybody else that's passing has been fighting for their lives to stay here. And so if you stay, understand that you're not going to have the ability to have survivor's guilt. You're going to have to get over it. You know that you're going to have to start again. Are you ready to do that? Do you understand that if you're an executive and the economy drops, you're going to probably have to get a job at Starbucks? Do you understand, or whatever the chains are that are still around? Do you understand the fact that some areas are being more plagued than others? Do you understand that some people are going to be more susceptible to the V word and that they're going to have ramifications? Are you willing to take that gamble? Are you willing to have the conversation with your children about what happens if mommy and daddy, if something, heaven forbid, happens to them? Who are they going to go with? Are you ready to have the conversation about the truth of us and the fact that we created this V word and now it's spreading and that we are paying the piper? Are we willing to have the conversations with other executives and say, okay, we really need to do entertainment with values? Nobody wants to talk about a celebrity right now. It's really silly. Nobody wants to talk about that they got a job as an actor doing something. I mean, that's a wonderful gift. It's the true gift of creation. But nobody wants to talk about that life right now. What they want to talk about is, how do we stay connected to each other in a world that won't allow us to come into proximity with each other? And what do we do with those of us out there who are warriors, who are not afraid of this P word and are willing to interact with other people? Do we keep vilifying them because they're willing to be loving and to continue loving another human being? Or are we going to go ahead and allow them to build charities or do charitable work where they go and spend time with people who are on their way out and are going home, and let me go and spend time with that person, just talking to them in the room? I can be 6 feet apart, but I'm not afraid. My point is, why don't we reward the people like me who are willing to go and visit your mom and your dad because you can't? That person should be someone that we go, okay, we're going to drive you over to see Grandma blah blah. She's a very important person. She did civil rights she was fighting for civil rights for us, and she looks like she's heading home. Can you go and spend time with this person in a non-religious way, but in a way that lets them know that humanity still cares about what they did for us? Or what about those pioneers out there who did something with NASA or the space astronauts if something happens to them? I mean, the baby boomers are not coming. A lot of the baby boomers it's time to go home. So how do we give thanks as a community to their service to humanity instead of letting them pass in isolation and alone? Because what he was crying about wasn't just that he was letting go of his friends. What he was crying about is that he was going to be left alone. And he knew that the world that we were in right now is afraid, and that loneliness wouldn't go away. And he's not into medication. He's not into all of that stuff. He's going to power through it. But no one's talking about that human expression and that humanality that we all share in common. I was very lucky in my life, and it's one of the great blessings that I've had and why I am the right person for this type of venture. I never had a chance to not be alone. My mom and dad were taken from me when I was very young, and ever since that I've been betrayed and all that other stuff. And what I didn't realize is that it was building someone who could lead this type of movement, because I wasn't attached to any one person anymore. And my danger, as I was talking to him, is I'm afraid that my heart is closing, because I'm finding that I would rather love humanity and rather do things for the collective than me. And it's a sacrifice that I'm on the verge of making, and that I'm actually okay with it, because I feel for myself that there is a greater need for us to come together and to love each other. And if I have to make that my priority in order to help as many people as we can find their peace before they go home to Dad, to the Heavenly Father, Dad. You know what I mean, like to the Dad, but to the Heavenly Father. If that's my path in life, then that is a gorgeous legacy to leave. And if that means that I have to let go of anybody that I would have married or that I would be with, then that still would be a legacy that is worth my adventure. And so his concern with me is that he doesn't want that to happen for me. But like I said to him, I said, but that's not our choices. Every one of us has to make a choice right now as to what we are willing to engage. Are we going to allow inequality any longer? The world is getting smaller, not larger. We don't even have the same excuses anymore. There's a question about why is it that all these politicians and all these people aren't getting it, but the common person is getting it. How does that happen? They're still going to work. We see them. They're on our TV. And it's not like you can hide from it. So what's the deal here? Why is it minorities that are going? Why isn't it it seems more like population control, but we're not talking about that. And I realize it's because it doesn't really matter right at this second, because we're leaving them alone. and we're not talking to their spiritual needs right now. It doesn't matter if they are left or right. This is a major equalizer. Everyone that's left when this is all said and done, because it keeps growing, they say on the news, at least if you listen to the news, that it keeps spiking and it keeps going. It's this V word that never stops. I mean, I've never seen this in my entire life, where no matter what season it is, in the summer, in the winter, it doesn't matter. I mean, it seems ridiculous to me, but it doesn't change the fact that there are a lot of people exiting for whatever reason, and they're heading home alone. So how do we connect to the loneliness of those that are exiting our reality, and those that will be left in our reality, and the loneliness they're going to feel? Imagine, if you will, what it must be like for a minority black person, or a minority Hispanic, or a minority gay person, where they are not only marginalized, but now their margins are diminishing and diminishing and diminishing, and they're becoming fewer and fewer people. And then imagine, if you will, in a Hispanic culture where some of them are in jail and some of them aren't in jail, what that feels like, because now you have an offset where it doesn't balance. Now there's more Hispanic women, and all of the men, well, not all of them, but a lot of the men are in jail or in rehab or whatever. And now we have where it gets smaller and smaller in each pool, and now they're isolated, and so now there's no connection there, and what that does to the psyche. Or how about African American experience, where they have this a similar situation, but they also have police brutality on top of it, so it gets smaller and smaller, and it breaks down those margins, and people start to feel more and more caged and trapped. So how do we deal with those needs? Or how about the the white American Anglo-Saxon community that is watching as all this plays out to their best friends or whatnot, and then they see their families, and they don't go and say goodbye to grandma and grandpa. What that must feel like for them. How do we deal with those needs? But nobody wants to talk about that because everybody's worried about the physical world. And my concern with our turquoise leadership and the entertainment with values is we have to jump the shark. We have to get to a point where someone out there goes, enough. We really do need to do something about the soul here. And not just speaking to the soul's evolution in terms of empowerment. We need to help the soul be reassured that this is part of what they're here to do, and that they do have a choice to give up or to go forward. But if they go forward, let's deal with those needs. That's what this whole thing about the legacy, what the show is about, and what I'm trying to get out there, is the fact that if they go on, what do we have in store for them? What can we tell them to expect? What can we tell them to prepare for? We're not saying that the negative is going to happen, but we're giving humanity the right to know, so that they can make the proper alignment for what they need to be sturdy and ready for it. Because it's one thing to think that it may happen, but it's a whole other thing at our level to realize it's going to happen. We know that this can't that you cannot give free money forever, and people can't go to work, and this thing is still spreading according to what they're saying. So at some point something gives. So how do we give fair share to everyone spiritually and help them understand what they're going to need to know? What is it that they need to prepare for? Where are the communities that are not mandating vaccinations? Where are the communities that are? So I can go that way and not that way. Because I don't want a seizure. I don't want to die of something stupid when I'm already fighting for my life now. But we're not dealing with those people's needs. We're dealing with the minority of people who are willing to take the gamble. Great. Take the gamble. We have no problem with it. Go right ahead. What about us? What about the majority of us who still want children and know that if we're already having all these problems, that there might be some ramifications with fertility? Why aren't we talking about it? It doesn't matter if they're trying to tell us that this is what's best for society. It's not best for everyone. And since this is already going on, you already have the V word or the P word circling everybody like sharks. Everybody's in the middle going, is it my turn? Is this musical chairs? Am I going to lose my chair? Am I going to lose my chair? And everybody's panicked. And then you have the rest of us going, I'm not worried about this. Why am I being suckered into this? And then people are like, oh, you're so reckless. What about us? I'm sorry. In humanity, there's something called eye-level humanity, where we respect each other. If you don't want to be near me because you're afraid and you want to take the V, then take your V ass over to another community and let me and the freedom people go this way. would be fair for everybody, is to allow people to go their separate directions. Who are the people who are building those communities? Who are the people, or the entrepreneurs, or the millionaires or billionaires who see the long-term effects of all this and realize that we're going to need to separate the two herds in order for the survival of the species? Because these people are going to go down whatever rabbit hole they get sent down, no matter what they say, no matter if it's right or wrong. And we know that, but it's not our judgment. That's something that everyone must do. But for those of us at Turquoise Leadership, we're going, okay, there's already a lot of warning signs. Let me just hold off for a minute, give it the time enough to grow and to be tested thoroughly, and then I will take the V word when it's time. But until I see why all these people are having all of these ramifications, which Al was talking about, and so were other people talking. There was like 3 of us screaming about this a year ago. So until those needs are, because they've been ahead of the curve, why don't we just go ahead and start doing things like our business is a V-word free zone, and watch everybody in the freaking world clamor to get in my job and to get a job for me? Or why don't we start building communities that are V-word free, instead of having this thing where we're going down the road where soon we're going to be having you can't drink at my water fountain again, and then the enslavement of people because they refuse to give up their rights. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm already losing all of these people. I'm already having to be left alone and of my own accord. And we're leaving our elderly, and we're ethically looking at this, and I'm having issues with that, and I'm trying not to let that be the weight that keeps me down, because I'm a free bird and I'm going. But when you are logical and you see these things, and you are a leader, especially a turquoise leader, you can't help but notice what this does to the soul. And what we're choosing is to be more afraid and so about ourselves and self-centered that we're sending people off to the hereafter without any type of spiritual guidance. We're sending them off because the churches are, they're taking care of themselves. And I'm not castigating again, but that is what's happening. We're not allowing services because it can hurt them physically. And I'm like, but what about them mentally? What about their spiritual nature? Oh, well, we have people talking about how to bring the law of attraction to them. That's great, but right now we don't even have an economy. Most people aren't working. But how does that serve them? We need to ground this and really have a discussion with honest, really forthcoming leaders that are going, okay, here's the truth. We started this, and we can't stop it. And there are consequences with the V, there are consequences without the V. This is a choice that you're going to have to make in and of yourself. Understand that once you make this choice, you have to pay the piper either way. If you're going to continue forward into whatever comes next, if you take the V word, let's be honest, there might be ramifications down the road. We don't know. We haven't had time to test it. But we need to do something for society that helps us feel a little bit safer. If you don't want to take the V, understand that you will have to go through getting this virus, and you're going to have to be willing to see if it takes you or not. Either way, you're taking a gamble. And as a spiritual person like me, as a turquoise leader, I would say, okay, thank you for your honesty. On spiritual terms, I will say this. Sometimes when you let the grand design decide who stays and who goes, things move quicker. It's called inoculation. The species doesn't die out. There are people who will be immune to it, and that's the divine plan. But on the same time, I get why you're afraid, but understand that if you add wood to fire, the fire grows bigger. And if you don't know if your body's going to have a negative reaction to it, then it is entirely up to you if you want to take that chance. But understand that you won't be able to, down the road, come back and sue anybody because you took the gamble. We told you that there was a chance that you would be infertile. We told you there was a chance that you would have a seizure or a stroke in a time where we don't understand a lot of things. But we were trying to do what's best, but they're not doing that, are they? These are honest conversations, and as you can see, anybody who sees this part is going to be like, that would be the way to go. I would feel more trustworthy about my leadership if they said stuff like that to me so that I can make a logical choice. And what it does is it would diffuse the situation between the two sectors that are now looking at each other going, I'm going to tell you like this. If someone comes to me and says anything about me having to take a vaccine, I'm going to knock them out. I'm just going to tell you right now. I don't trust anything that I don't have the answers to, and since nobody's allowing me to ask the questions, I'm like on the wall. It's not going to happen. But if you were able to say something like you just said to me, I'm willing to come to the table and go, okay, well, explain to me what is going on with the V word that is making some people have seizures and some people have clots, and then explain, have you figured that out yet? If not, then stop it for just long enough to figure that out. Once you can address that concern, then the rest of the population is willing to come with you. But until you do that, it becomes a martial law scenario where you are taking my rights away. And people don't want to hear that. Okay, fine. For those of us who are choosing of our own free accord to go through the fire and to just become inoculated naturally, I've said this, I even wrote an article where I declared myself that I would be a willing guinea pig that would be, as a leader in the worldview, to go and get the P word and get it directly injected into me and let it take its chance. I said that from the very beginning, because here's my thing. I will let God, for me, decide what happens to me. I don't care about the ramifications of that. That is natural selection. I'm that's science. I'm okay with that. But what I'm not okay with is the manipulation of it and not letting people know the truth. And now all these people are suffering. And we know the numbers they're deflated, not inflated, because they want us to continue taking it. Well, that's fine. But who's going to represent these concerns? Because what's happening is that we're not only now divided and losing people, and now all the margins are becoming less marginalized. Now they're becoming isolated like lone wolves. And wolves that are alone, that come into contact with each other, become rather dangerous. So instead of being irresponsible as leaders, why don't we do entertainment with values, if you will, or talk directly to... Can you imagine if... I'll put it this way. Sorry, I'm going fast. Can you imagine what it would look like if someone allowed me to talk to one of these people? I guarantee you the world would watch. Because I'm not being illogical. I'm asking you logical questions. And if you don't know the answer, then it helps you grow and it helps me understand. The more that we relate to each other in this way, the more that humanity will follow. Because they want to know. They want to hear themselves. They don't want to hear a bureaucrat telling a bunch of numbers that don't make sense anyway. If you're going to genocide the entire homeless population, if that's your intention here, and you're going to do it during a census year, coincidentally, so that the numbers aren't there, then don't be surprised if people start to build conspiracy theories. And I've said it before, conspiracy theories are neither true nor lies. They're just a conspiracy that nobody wants to address. If you address the problem, it would be a conspiracy. It would be a question-answer, period. But people don't want to hear that. But what's happening is that, fine, you want to play this game, we're going to play this game. It's not my karma. But what I'm understanding now with interacting with other people, and I think that's why they're keeping us apart, is that you then have to address the needs of those that are going to go on. That the divine chooses to survive either the V word or the actual pandemic. What about their needs? It's not getting any easier for them. It's getting more complicated for them. They're now having to say goodbye and having survivor's guilt, and on top of it, they don't have the money that they need. And if they do, it's like a certain amount of money, and they're not being educated on how to use it, so then it's gone before they have it, and they don't understand that it's not going to get better. Why aren't we dealing with those that will go on? Why aren't we dealing with the people who are choosing to fight for life? Why aren't we allowing people like me to interact with the elderly or people who are not coming through? Because I'm not afraid of this, and if I go doing that, I die with honor. I'm okay with that. Why aren't you allowing people like me to have the floor for a minute to soothe the nerves of people who are like me, who are feeling like we're about to be electrocuted? Like, it just feels like we're having like the worst life of our times. We're not afraid of the P word, we're afraid of the V word, and we're being crucified because we don't want to put something in our bodies that could hurt us. And then we bring the question up about children. We're allowing our children to become inoculated naturally. I'm sorry, are they made of unicorn blood and something else? Or are they fucking different than we are? Because I'm pretty sure it's our children. So if they can make it, so can we. So are we sacrificing the kids? Or are we just going, well, fuck it, the kids. Let's lose this generation in order we can have more kids down the road. Not realizing that if that's what they're thinking, that karmically we know there's infertility down the road because God doesn't play that game. You see what I'm saying? If we're willing to sacrifice an entire generation because we need to get rid of it and we're just going to let them to be the sacrificial lamb, then understand that the consequence will have to be that we become an infertile civilization and that it just dies. That's not science or faith. That's logic. Why would the universe as a great academy allow people who sacrifice an entire generation to have children? I'm sorry. Are we now in magic land? La la la. Like, But we're not dealing with these things. And so the question I have for us as a turquoise leadership, as entertainment people, because I'm still stopping the show, but my passion really is in the humanitarian effort part of it, which is mom and dad, or you and your wife or husband may not make it. Who raises your kids? Logical question. If something happened to Betsy happens with one of you having a stroke or a seizure or some sort of issue with the V word, do you have enough insurance, or how is this going to work out? Who's going to take care of you? How are they going to have the money in a recession, in the situation? How are you? I'm saying things like that. I'm not being an alarmist. I'm being what's called an adult. I'm trying to get everybody to understand that these are the consequences and questions that we must be looking at. The worst thing that happens is that we're prepared for something negative and everything turns out positive. But that preparation saves lives. And that's the truth of what turquoise leadership would be about, and why this show is so fucking important to get on the air. But I'm not going to keep running my head and banging against the wall. Either people want to help and really do something for humanity, or they're not going to want to. I still got to go look at Dairy Queen. Still got to get me a day job, because I'm going to be fine. I already know that. The divine's already chosen me. I've already been through this. It doesn't do anything to me. I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed. But the problem with that is that I see the fact that it's not going to be the easiest road for me, or for you, or for any of us. And instead of banding together, we're being kept apart out of fear. But I'm not afraid. So since I'm not afraid, where are the other people who are not afraid, who are willing to build what we need to have in place for when all this all shit goes down? It's not illogical. It's called smart. It's called brilliance. It's called a visionary. It's called innovation. It's the future of our world. It's not up to us, as you can see. Otherwise, we would have eradicated it already. The truth of us is that we must take accountability for our own actions. But right now, we're not even willing to come to the table. If someone can explain to me why I don't have a right to be heard right now to a world audience that is wanting to hear this, I'm not crazy. Everything I'm saying is completely true and logical, but people don't want to deal with the truth because they rather be manipulated and lied to because it's what they're used to. But the great academy has, for some whatever reason, decided that that's no longer suitable, that the truth is what needs to come out. Okay. So let me have a conversation with one of these brilliant minds, or a reporter or something, and ask these questions. And then let the report, if you don't want me to ask, then bring the reporter and I will ask the reporter will ask the questions to the people. And I will come, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. I don't need to be fucking famous to do it. I'm just representing the people. Who's representing the people? I get it. We really want the soul to evolve, but right now we can't even unite our planet on whether or not we should say goodbye to mom and dad. We're cremating bodies when it's not the PL word, it's the PA word. Why are we doing that? If it's not the PL word, it's not like I'm saying don't do it. I'm just asking a logical question. Last time I checked, the only time that we would ever do the cremations is during a PL because of the toxins. Is it because we're running out of space to bury? Bullshit. We rape and pour and tear apart our planet all the time. We do it for paper. We do it for stupid shit all the time. What, you can't tell me that you can't bury a person in that ground? Are you psychotic? But you'll blow a bomb on the ground, won't you? You'll do nuclear weaponry all over the planet, but you won't bury people? Spare me. But that's a logical question, right? Why aren't we asking that? And people think like I'm gunning for anybody. I'm just asking questions. I'm the most logical person in the world. If you have answers to all of my questions, then we wouldn't have this problem, would we? I'm not like sitting here going, I want to be like crucified, or I want to have problems with people. Like, that's not my idea of a good fucking time. But no one's being allowed to ask questions. What kind of leadership is that? What kind of leadership can't answer the questions of the people? That's not leadership. That's dictatorship. That's a communist party. I'm not saying pointing at America or nothing like that. I'm saying the world at large. We get it. You're afraid. You unleashed a monster onto society, and you're trying to do your best to. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, a big benefit of the doubt, because honestly, I don't even owe you this, but I'm giving you this ability to reach me halfway here. But I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that you're trying to clean up the mess that you've created. But your mess is now actually hurting people even more than what would have just happened if it just would have gone through the communities. Are you targeting people? Why are you running ads specifically geared towards getting African Americans to get vaccinations when we as a whole are already seeing complications That doesn't look very good for you all, does it? Why are you targeting that particular demographic, huh? That doesn't sit well with my soul. Why are you pointing to them and going, African Americans, this is what you need to know? I see it all over my YouTube, and you can look at it, and I'm really outraged by this. Because what it indicates to me is that though you understand that they probably have a higher chance of getting a complication from the V word, you'd rather sacrifice them. Why don't you just say, if it's not that big of a deal, here's what you need to know about the V, and then break it down from there in every ethnicity. Why are you targeting the African American experience? It pisses me off. Someone out there needs to ask these questions if it's not me. And if you think I'm a big bag of bullshit looking in my eyes, I'm not kidding. You're not going to sacrifice anybody. Get it? We're in this together. It is a collective venture. Humanity is the one being judged for this bullshit that we're doing. I get it. Sacrifice is always part of life, at least according to this simulation. But when do we take accountability for the fact that you shouldn't be not answering the questions? This is one of those posts that's very, very direct to people. And whether people like it or not, it is the truth of all things right now. There's multiple perspectives, I get it. But you're not answering the questions to even allow us to the table. And that's why we're having these problems. Now we have people having seizures in cars. We have people having blood clots. We have people... And you're going to sit there and say, well, we couldn't have known. Arevalo has been saying this. Who else? David Palmer has been saying this. There has been people... There's a scientist in Italy... Or no, Spain, I'm sorry, from my home country, that also has been warning about this for a year and a half now. Don't tell the American people that there was no one out there telling the truth of this bullshit before, when we have it in writing, we have it in video, you can't hide from that. Those are leaders. Those are people who went up against the current. I could give a fuck if people didn't like me at the time. It was just the truth. That's what leadership does. And so for the turquoise leadership, now we're getting to a point where we need to do something. Because with the conversation that I had with my friend, it was visually in my face, and I could have sat there and just been like, well, he's having a sensitive moment, people are dying around him and stuff like that, but it was a representation of what's going on with humanity. Why aren't we dealing with the spiritual needs and the needs of the people that will persevere? We're so worried about the end that we're not worried about the beginning. That's it for me on Altruistic Channels. I hope that you guys are ready for all of what's happening. This is not nuclear science. It's divinity. It's the divine plan. And we have an opportunity here as a society to stop caring what other people think of us when we ask these questions, because we're representing the people. And we, the people, are watching things go down that should not be happening. If you want us to understand and to go with you on this journey and to trust you, then meet with people like me, or meet with people who are truly inspiring to try to know what's going on and be honest and say what I've said. Hey, look, we're doing the best we can. We are doing the best we can. We started a fire that we can't put out, and what we're doing now is we're trying to contain it as much as possible. We're not targeting African Americans, we're not targeting Hispanic population, we're not targeting the homeless population. But what we're trying to do is ensure that everybody gets the vaccination. And then be ready for me to say, but I don't want that because you haven't tested it long enough. I'm watching people have seizures. I'm watching people have blood clots. Why am I going to put that into my body when I could just become inoculated and not worry about it? What are you thinking? And then have them retort to me. And then me say to them, yes, but that still doesn't answer my question about infertility. I still want children. Our species still has to go on. What are you going to do with that? Well, I can't promise, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But guess what? Now I'm more willing to discuss having the V word, right? Because at least they've had an ongoing conversation. But right now, it's a brick wall. We have to get everybody to do this. And you're vilifying people who ask questions. Danger. Danger, Will Robinson. That doesn't fly. That's it for me, guys. I hope this makes a difference in your day, and I hope it really gets you asking questions and really relating to people. If you can't even think of yourself doing an entertainment show with values at this point, then why don't you help me do at least a charity that interacts, where I get to go out with the older community and just sit with them and talk to them on their last days. I mean, if their family won't do it, we as a community really should be able to do it. There are a lot of us out there who aren't afraid of this, who are ready to go to the hereafter, however the hell it comes, and are willing to be something of an inspiration to those people. There are amazing people who have really done amazing things for our communities who are dying alone, and we're allowing it to happen out of fear. Well, I'm not afraid. So how about putting me in a place where I can go and I'll do it my damn self? And I'm not alone. Let's build something that brings us together and really focuses our energy there. I would love to go and sit. I mean, I had a magical day with my friend yesterday, and it really made a difference. Like he cried. I mean, this is absolutely this is unforgivable to me. What we're doing to our older generations. We talk about having respect for the elders, and here we are letting them go home without even seeing them, and it's their own families at that. And instead of vilifying the people who are afraid, why don't we just, as the brave ones, go and help? That's it for me, guys.